So hello, everybody. Welcome to the GSA. We're very excited to have you here this year. This is our first meeting of the semester, obviously, and it is so good to see all of your wonderful faces. So the first thing we're going to do is call the meeting to order and begin our roll call vote, which I will ask our secretary, Sumit, if he can take care of that.
Thanks, Lexi. Hey, hi all. Hope you're having a good week. So first of all, since I'm in the library, so as a safety precaution, I would like to have my mask up first before anyone asks for any restrictions. And then I will start for calling for today's meeting. So I will start by naming the chapter, and it would be helpful if you say you're present, yes, by saying yes, you're present. So I'll start with Masters of Accounting.
Yes, here.
Thank you. Adult Workforce and Continuing Professional Education.
Yes, I'm here.
Thank you. Animal Science.
Said animal science, that'd be me.
Sorry, Animal Science.
I'm here.
Okay. Biological and Agricultural Engineering.
I'm here.
Thank you. Biology.
That's me.
Biomath.
Here.
Biomedical Engineering.
Here.
Business Administrations, MBA.
Here.
Chemical and Biomolecular Engineering.
Here.
Chemistry.
Here.
Civil Engineering.
Yes.
Communication.
Here.
Communication, Rhetoric and Digital Media. Communication, Rhetoric and Digital Media. So I'm moving forward. Computer Science Engineering. Computer Science Engineering. Crop and Soil Sciences.
Here.
Thank you. Economics.
I'm here.
Electrical and Computer Engineering.
Present.
English.
Here.
Entomology.
Here.
Forest Biomaterials. Forest Biomaterials. Forestry and Environmental Resources.
Here.
Thank you. Genetics.
Here.
Genomic Sciences.
Present.
Higher Education.
Here.
History. History. Horticultural Science.
Here.
Thank you. Indian Graduate Student Association. Indian Graduate Student Association. Industrial and Systems Engineering.
Here.
International Studies.
Here.
Marine Earth and Atmospheric Sciences.
Here.
Material Sciences and Engineering.
Here.
Mathematics.
Here.
Mechanical and Aerospace Engineering.
Here.
Microbiology. Microbiology. Operational Research Engineering.
Here.
Parks, Recreation and Tourism Management.
Here.
College of Design. PhD College of Design Student Association. Rosa McDonald.
Here.
Physics.
Here.
Physiology. Physiology. Plant Biology.
She'll be late.
Okay. Plant Pathology.
Yeah. Here.
Poultry Science.
Here.
Psychology.
Here.
Psychology. Mitch McDonald.
Yes, here.
Public Administration. Public Administration, Christine Todd. Sociology. Sociology?
Here. Sociology.
Okay. Statistics?
Here.
Teacher education and learning sciences? Teacher education and learning sciences? Technical communication? Technical communication? Textiles?
I'm here.
Toxicology? Toxicology?
Here.
Veterinary medicine?
Here.
And US GSA?
Here.
Okay, great. So, Lexi, I believe I'm done with all the present chapters.
Was anybody missed?
Yeah, many of them.
Well, I mean, anybody on this call, was your chapter not called?
Okay,
I'm here for history. I didn't hear that.
okay, history. Okay, you're good.
All right. With everyone here, thank you all so much for being here. We're excited to welcome two guests to GSA tonight. The first of our guests is going to be Student Senate President Coleman Simpson to talk to us a little bit about the ongoing opportunities in SG. So Coleman, with that, take it away.
Great, thank you, Lexi. Hi, everyone. Like Lexi said, my name is Coleman Simpson. I am the Student Senate President for NC State Student Government this year, where we represent all 37,000 students through the Student Senate. Graduate students are incredibly lucky in that we have 15 students of the 72 seats representing graduate students. I'm also a graduate student. I'm sorry I didn't establish that. I'm a second-year master's student in agricultural leadership. But we have 15 seats that are currently open for, that's a lie. We have 15 seats for graduate students. Of those seats, 3 are currently open for the fall election. These seats are dedicated and reserved for graduate students that this is their first semester at NC State or their first fall semester. So if you started last spring and this is your first fall semester, you're eligible, or if this is your first fall semester in general or your first semester, you're eligible to run for those seats. I'm going to put the intent to run form in the chat so that you're eligible to run. I'd ask that you all share this with your individual chapters. Graduate students have historically had a big problem with making sure all of our seats are filled, and graduate students haven't been as effectively represented on the Senate because of that. However, we have a lot of energy around that this year, and we're really, really close to having all of the graduate seats represented this year. After this last meeting, we'll have one more open seat in the Senate. That's not these 3 seats currently, and if all 3 seats are filled after the election, we'll have a full 15 people graduate representation. I know Lexi can speak to that a little bit separately, and Miles Calzini can also speak to his experiences about how important it is to have graduate voices represent the students on the Senate. We pass fee proposal increases every year, and so a lot of the times it comes down to what the energy and the drive behind the graduate delegation is on what the Senate passes those recommendations as. We've had times where the Senate was fully ready to pass a full increase proposed from one of our campus partners, and graduate students came and said, we're not ready for this, we need to go lower. And the Senate passed lower increases based on the energy and the perspective of graduate students. So I just wanted to come and chat real fast and share the good news that the elections are starting and that these seats are open. I hope to see them filled. If they're not filled, they go to me for appointment. So you might see me again if there are any more seats open. And I'm going to get my email as well in the chat. If you have any questions about student government or if there's anything I can help you with, please feel free to reach out. That's all I have, Lexi. Is it okay to ask for any questions?
Yes, absolutely. Are there any questions for Coleman? You can ask them in the chat, or you can raise your hand and unmute yourself. All righty. Seeing no questions, thank you so much, Coleman. I really appreciate you coming by. Coleman, if you want to stick around, you are more than welcome to hang out.
Awesome. Thanks, Lexi. Thanks for having me, y'all.
Of course. The next person that we have up, and it is my pleasure to welcome Dr. Juli Cassani, the Director of Student Health Services here at NC State. Dr. Cassani, would you like to say a few words to introduce yourself?
Sure. So I think some of you may actually know me from here, there, and everywhere, but it's a pleasure to be here, and thanks for inviting me. It's been a crazy couple of days, as you know, so I will just, if it's okay with you, Lexi, if you have questions, if they have questions, it's maybe better to just wing it that way.
That sounds good. Does anyone have any questions for Dr. Cassani regarding COVID-19, student health, how the university is handling things? Dr. Cassani is great and is an open book, so any questions you guys have are invited.
I think, Lexi, do you want me to do it, or you want to take it, or?
Why don't you go ahead, Dr. Cassani?
I think John Hedlund had a question. Sorry.
Yeah, hi. I just had a question about grad student classes and why some grad student classes are still being held in person. I've talked to a number of fellow grad students who are extremely concerned about this, that for some reason it's considered okay to have grad classes, but undergrad classes are not safe. I know a lot of grad classes were already online, but ones that are not, a number of them are still being held in person. So I was wondering if you could speak to that.
Yeah, no, I can't. And I apologize. I'm not trying to skirt the issue. As Lexi said, I am pretty much an open book. But honestly, since last Monday, I have done nothing but medical issues. And so I don't have the answer to that. Sorry. I don't know what decision went into that at all. I think it was just an attempt to layer the de-densification, new words, de-densification of campus. And so they took the undergraduate and moved to keep the graduates on. But that's the best answer I have. I think Dr. Lewis Hunt is actually a good person to answer because he knows, he's been involved more in those decision makings. Sorry.
I'm also going to redirect that to Dean Harries, who is both our advisor and the Dean of the Graduate School. Dean Harries, do you have any insights on that one?
I mean, I have a few, but I mean, I'll admit that I'm not on the group that made that decision in terms of what was moving forward on the campus. I would say there are probably two things that influence that. One is that graduate classes, by and large, tend to be much smaller. And so the issues of having significant students in classrooms isn't as big an issue. And I think, you know, overall, graduate students are also less likely to go to frat parties. And I think there is a sense that graduate students are older, they're more responsible, and therefore the classroom environment is, I mean, I think overall the sense as a university is it's really not the classrooms that are the dangers, it's what's going on outside of them. And, you know, Julie, maybe you can talk more to, you know, I think there's relative confidence that the classrooms were relatively safe spaces as compared to other places. I mean, there's been no evidence of any classrooms being, you know, sort of hot points for COVID spread. I mean, people have to wear masks, which isn't true at a lot of the, well, should have been true, but wasn't true at a lot of the parties that happened. And I think it's just a very different population that I think overall is thought to be more responsible and just more in tune to what the guidelines are. I mean, I will add to what Julie said in terms of the fact that there aren't that many grad courses that are currently online. In fact, the percentage of grad courses that are online was lower than the overall for undergrad. So, you know, I don't know exactly what the rationale was for making that differentiation, but Chapel Hill, I think, sort of led with that. And many of the aspects that are happening here are mirroring that.
I also think that, I mean, there was some discussion that the in-person experience for the graduate student is critical, not just better, but critical. And so I think that that weighed on it too. There's a question in the chat from Samit about if anyone, oh, no, sorry, wrong question, from Allison about how are we conducting testing within the clusters. Oh, wow, testing. So we're doing several layers of testing. So first off, we're testing people who come into student health who have symptoms or who are close contact. And frankly, we're trying not to have them make an appointment with the provider, but every once in a while they sneak in. And that is anybody who wants a test. So last Tuesday, we opened up to basically, we would test anybody who requested it. So that number one is seeing a provider. Number two is we have opened it up widely. So if you want a test, you can call, make an appointment, and come get a test. No reasons, no whys, no wherefores. The third group is the, and perhaps some of you are in this group, is the Wolfpack surveillance program. So this is for asymptomatic individuals, and we test everyone every other week. There's two cohorts, cohort A, cohort B. Actually that's been going like gangbusters. We've just about reached our target of 500 people enrolled in that program, 250 people a week. It's out of the 500 people, it's 300 students, 100 faculty, and 100 staff. And I can tell you that we didn't get a lot of faculty enrollment, so we took some of the students and put that in that cohort. And of the students, I would say it's about 2/3, 1/3, 2/3 undergraduate and 1/3 graduate. And and I did that because I knew that as graduate students, you play multiple roles. You're not just students, but frequently you're TAs, you're in the labs. And so I wanted to get that, as much as I could, that full experience. So we've done about, I can talk forever about this program, it's my baby. We've done about, out of the 500 people, we've done about 350 tests so far. We've had 2 positives in that. So that's your rate, right? It's pretty low. So that's that. We also have done cluster testing. If we identify people, we test around them. Today, we initiated testing everybody that we put into isolation and quarantine, who basically, these are by and large undergraduate students who live in the residence halls, who are close contact, or they themselves are either being followed or have tested positive, and we test that whole bunch. And with the announcement, I'm sure you saw Carol, part of the plan is to go to Carroll Hall tomorrow and test everybody who's still living there, and anybody who's been there eventually since the 20th. So we are doing, you know, layered testing around events. We're also doing surveillance, and we're also testing really anybody who wants it on campus, student-wise. And that test, so let me squash the rumors because I know they're out there. Number one is that if you have, if you go and get a test, students are going off campus, which makes it really hard for us to know who they are because it has to track back to us, which doesn't always happen. They're afraid that something's going to happen to them, and yes, they are right. Something is going to happen to them. We're going to help take care of them and make sure that they're doing good isolation and quarantine. Nobody gets in trouble, so there's that. And people go and they've given like home addresses, or they've frankly lied about their addresses. That really puts a crimp in everybody's style and helps the outbreak to continue. The other thing is, the other rumor was that it cost money. And yes, that's true. If you don't have, if you're not a close contact or you don't have symptoms, it could potentially cost money. What we do is we bill your insurance. If your insurance doesn't cover it, as of last Tuesday, we cover it. Because the university stepped up and did that. And the reason we're doing that is because we want people to get tested. So we're really trying to do that. So those are two rumors. And the only other thing is you do need an appointment because we don't want 20 people standing in line like some other universities have done, like down the road, and had people in piles outside of their clinic door violating the no congregate rule. So we don't want that. So we do it by appointment. The appointments are 10 minutes. So that means we can see 6 people an hour, and our throughput is actually pretty good. We get a turnaround time of about 24, 36 hours, which is also pretty darn good. So that's the story about testing. It's there, it's available. Take advantage of it.
Really quickly, I'm going to pop up into the raised hand function because I see James Withrow has a question, who is GSA President Emeritus and a Senator. He's had his hand up for a while. James?
Hi, Dr. Cassani. So as Dean Harries mentioned a few minutes ago, it seems like classes weren't really the problem where COVID was spreading. So since students are still, living on and around campus, at least many of them, what do you think as far as the prospect of continued spread, and do you anticipate there's potential for future changes in overall university policy?
Yeah, so I don't know about the policy, but I do know that we talk about, I do know that we talk constantly about thresholds. What's the next step? What's the next step? What's the next step? But of course, what's the ultimate step, right? We talk constantly about it. I went through this discussion today with athletics. And so we're always talking thresholds. And I'll give you the answer, and I know that some of you will appreciate this. And, I think, James, you know me well enough to know my sense of humor. But, to me, I did public health preparedness before I came to NC State. I did it for 17 years in state government and many other levels. And, thresholds was always the conversation. And there's no good science to do it, and nobody really knows. And my sort of rule of thumb is it's kind of like good food and good music. You know it when you've had it, but you can't describe it beforehand. And I mean, we've reached a couple of points, and athletics was one of them. I had a conversation when the first couple of positives came out, and they were like, well, when do we know to shut down? And then before I could give an answer, we got another call that there were a few more positives, and I said, we're there. That's kind of the discussion to that effect. And there was another, on campus, off campus, living conditions versus not. So I think what we're seeing now, I think that the issues around, fraternity, sorority life were, I'm going to say unique, different, separate, huge, right? But I think now we're starting to see the cases on campus and the case counts on campus, what I expected to see. We're kind of back to where I thought we'd be a week or two ago. And so we're starting to see cases. And you're right, it has a lot to do with the living rather than the classroom. And I wish, it's a balance, right? I wish we could I almost wish we could control living as much as we control the classrooms, but we can't, and we shouldn't, right? But I wish we could, honestly, because from a communicable disease perspective. So it's a tough place to be. And yeah, we're working through that. So hopefully that helped a little bit. Maybe not a totally direct answer in the threshold issues, but what I have, I can tell you that was the majority of my work for 17 years.
I have one question.
Go right ahead.
Okay, so because the outbreak seems to hit us hard this week, how likely would you recommend students who are having other health issue and are worrying if it may not be safe for them to visit health center this week?
Yeah, so we have done a lot in the health center to engineer safety. And, I think some of it's going to stick beyond COVID. So first of all, appointments. We have switched to totally call-in appointments so that we can manage and control who's here and when and how frequently people are being seen. that I think has, you know, our goal is to never have a person in the waiting room. And I rarely see somebody sitting out there. We don't have many seats. We took a lot of them out. But we've also done, you know, phone check-in. So you can, once you're close to the building, you can check in. You don't have to go to those, if any of you are germophobics, you don't have to go to those kiosks anymore. You can check in on your phone. So we've been able to do that. That's a keeper. We're keeping that. We've also been able to do some other engineering to keep people from crowding. And then in the back, once you're back and getting seen, for people who have respiratory symptoms or symptoms that we think might be COVID, you come back, you're in an exam room, and you never leave the room. Everybody comes to you. So if there's testing that needs to get done of any kind, including venipuncture, the technicians will come to you. So what that's trying to do is to keep sick people in a room, and then they leave. We have 2 halls down, if you're familiar with student health at all, hall 6 and 7. Those are our respiratory halls. So you go down there without stopping, so any contact is casual, into the room, you get your evaluation, and then you leave by the side door. So you don't go back out into the waiting room. So we're trying to avoid that. I work here. I'm here every day, and being here at 7:30 is not late for me lately. I'm here every day. I don't feel unsafe here. In fact, I feel safer here than in a lot of other places. So I would encourage, and the other part of that I would say is if you do have risk factors and feel uncomfortable coming, I would come early. The early morning appointments tend to be our, you know, more non-communicable disease, illnesses, diseases, ongoing care. And so it's a little bit easier to be here then. So good question. How do you use the services?
All right, we have a very long question from Hannah Simmons, and so I'm going to let them ask if they would like to via their mic.
Yeah, I can say that because it'll be a little shorter if I just tell you guys. So I'm wondering how graduate students should handle feeling unsafe in their face-to-face interactions. I've had a couple graduate students that I know, like within my department, that came to me and said that they had someone in a face-to-face class that reported to the professor that they were COVID positive. And their professor, who they also work for and they take the class from, despite that, asked them to still come into work, and they're going to proceed with the face-to-face class. But a lot of those graduate students are feeling uncomfortable with that. However, there's an obvious power dynamic that's not in their favor because this is their advisor, and they are not comfortable saying no to their advisor, nor are they comfortable reporting them, which is why they came to me in confidence, because they're not really sure how to handle this situation. They're feeling unsafe, but they're also worried about their jobs and their funding and their spot here at State because they're worried about going to class with someone who might be COVID positive. So the face-to-face classes are kind of posing an issue for them in that regard.
So I'll take a first bit, and then I think Dean Harris will probably want to jump in. I'm sorry if I put you on the spot there, but you know, I think this is not an uncommon situation. There are a lot of power dynamics in a lot of places, and it's easy as a graduate student to feel disempowered. I mean, it really is. But I think you have more of a voice than maybe you think you do. So, of course, always the first step is voice it. And you can do it politely. You can do it assertively without being rude, and it's gutsy at times. And I appreciate that a lot. Trust me. Remember, I was in medical training, power dynamics, right? And so I think that the first step is to try to address it with the person and say, I'm uncomfortable when you do make that kind of decision, and here's why. If that doesn't work, or you just really feel that's a no-go, I believe that there are procedures in place for you to be able to raise that higher, or to other people who maybe do have an equal footing or do have the power to do that. And this is when I'm going to turn it over to Dean Harris and see what specific to your situations.
Yeah, I mean, each one of these cases is relatively unique. It's hard for me to give sort of very specific, directions or approaches that govern all of these various relationships. I think certainly there is a power differential. I think we all acknowledge that. And, I would hope that, I mean, this is a little convoluted because it's a classroom environment and I gather a lab. Hannah, correct me if I'm misinterpreting this, but this is a lab classroom sort of, the COVID is in the classroom and.
Yeah, so the students I know are taking a class taught by their laboratory advisor. And so the class is where the issue was, but the advisor still asked that they continue coming to work, even though some of the students were exposed, some of the other students weren't exposed. They're worried about exposing each other, etc. So
no, and I think having a conversation in that case really about how do you, first of all, they should probably get tested. I don't know if they're part of the tracing that's going on or any of that, but it seems like, certainly if they're worried, that's sort of step one, and making sure that, where they are health-wise. I think also having a discussion with the advisor about how they stagger schedules. I mean, because we're still in terms of research, I mean, we're certainly not at full capacity yet. And so there should be ways that alternative schedules and non-overlapping schedules can be put in place. I think, RAs are among the most difficult things that we're working with because, I mean, for people who can work all remotely, it's really not a problem. But if you sort of exhausted your ability to work remotely and the grant is, the expectations are that new data are being generated, that's complex, but I think there are ways that can be handled. And I think, sort of going back to what Juli was talking about, sometimes there need to be these uncomfortable conversations and straightforward conversations about how people are feeling and why. I know that's certainly easier for me to say than potentially given the power dynamic, but I think most faculty advisors would try to work it out so that students can be successful. And I would say if they can't work it out with their advisor, they can certainly come and talk to me or, the DGP in the program or the associate dean for academics in the college. I mean, there's a pathway there to try to work this out to a way that is hopefully, there's no way we can be at zero risk. I mean, that just doesn't exist, unfortunately. But I think there are ways that, in most cases, where it can be accommodated to hopefully the point where students are feeling at least relatively safe. And I will say that in terms of research, we've had no evidence of any clusters or even any cases that are known that are associated with lab transmission. But maybe there's some I don't know about, but that's what I just heard from the head of research earlier today.
All righty, we have a question from Andrew Friedman. Andrew, do you want to take it away?
Sure. Well, thanks for letting me ask a question to you both. This is mostly for Dr. Cassani. She probably knows a little bit more about this. Do you know if there was any sort of model that was used to determine basically how safe it was to return to campus? And I have a follow-up, whether you say yes or no to this question. I just want to know.
So we looked at a lot of different models, and they helped inform the decision. They never make a decision for you. I do know also that it's not just a single, simple, the chancellor makes a decision and away we go. There's lots of different factors and people who have input into those decisions. So, there were some models that we had that were generated here on campus. there were some, we were looking, of course, always at the Washington line models and those, and so those are the things that we looked at.
So what did the models that you're talking about predict? Like what was the response variable in those models? Like what were they predicting?
Yeah, so I think when early on, it's a lot about timing also. And I think that early on, when major decisions were made to come back to campus, the models predicted that it would be controllable. As we got closer and closer to opening, there still was some concern that the numbers weren't quite where we thought they would be. Remember all that chatter in the summer? And a lot of discussion went into, well, what would happen? And that's why we put into place these varying levels of thresholds. There's ultimate thresholds and then intermediate. So that's when we were looking at some of those. And so when we got a lot of cases, we had clearly reached those thresholds. So I don't know if that answers.
So there were thresholds that, like, you decided that were above 0 that said this amount of people getting sick was okay.
It's not as clear cut as that, and it's not necessarily, maybe I misused the word threshold because earlier I had said that we had thresholds, but we don't know exactly what that number is. We know the places where the places are, but we don't know what the numbers are. So let me go back to your question. Infections are never okay. It's a balance, right? And putting as much as we did in place, we tried to reduce the spread and reduce what we could.
So just really quickly, so if the goal was to reduce what you could instead of keeping, I mean, you're trying to keep people safe, and I get that, and that's like totally the point, right? But if the models were predicting that like anyone was getting sick, I mean basically like this idea that like you could do enough of like measures to show that like maybe the amount of people getting sick was like below a certain level. I mean, I think that if we were concerned it would go above that threshold at all, that should have been the case to the Board of Governors before people had to get sick to make the case and to eventually close. Because it seems to me, and I mean, does this not make sense? Like, tell me if this doesn't make sense. It seems to me like the people who actually got sick ended up being like sacrificed for the eventual decision to close down, when we could have predicted that those people could have gotten sick.
Well, I understand what you're asking. I don't think I'm the person to answer. I'm not trying to be evasive. I'm rarely evasive, but I didn't make the decisions. I helped inform the decisions. And so I think, it's a good question. And I think the question needs to be directed to the people who make decisions. I help inform them. And, I looked at the models, I studied the models, I sweated over the models and gave advice based on those models. And, if we did this, this is what we could expect. And if we did that, that's what we could expect. And so, and then that goes into the pot on how to make a decision. I've worked in government for years and know that that's how you push up to the policymakers. And then you work hard at implementing the policy. And that's what we've been doing here.
Thank you for all that you are personally currently doing. Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate that a lot. Really good.
Do we have any more questions for Dr. Cassani? James?
Hi again. Sorry, my video's off. Just trying to save bandwidth. So I'm curious about, it seems like, you know more about this than I do, but it seems like the public health guidelines were suggesting that, something on the order of our campus reopening was unadvisable. So I mean, were you or anyone else in the kind of student health side advocating that we shouldn't reopen like this?
So I'm not sure that it was unadvisable. I think that it was clear that there would be, that there would be challenges, and there were, and there are. I think that the university took it very seriously what those challenges were. I mean, does a piece of plexiglass exist that we didn't use? I mean, there's more plexiglass on campus than I've ever seen in my entire life put together. And so I think that a lot of measures were put into place to try to avoid, avoid shutting down again. I mean, I know that everybody on the executive committee, it breaks our heart to say to 18, 19, 20, 21-year-olds, change your life back, and change your first semester in college. What an experience, right? So, and it all goes into the pot, and it all has to be balanced. And the layered protections, I think, were executed fairly well. Actually, this is uncharted ground. I mean, I spent 17 years planning for a pandemic I never thought would exist, and here I am in the middle of it. So, if we had been right, we would have been right. If we had been wrong, we would have been wrong. And I think that we tried our best to avoid problems. And again, some decisions are made at very high places.
James, do you have a quick follow-up? I see your hand's still up.
Sorry, I don't know. I'm thinking, sorry, just give me a sec.
Okay, Andrew, would you like to ask a question in the meantime?
Just to clarify something, again, thank you for all that you're doing. I think that it's important to keep mentioning that. I'm not, when I'm asking these questions, I'm not placing the blame on you personally. I think that there's an argument to be made though about, so let me start over. I think that it was probably not a good decision for the university to send out a public statement blaming students for what happened. I think that especially the fact that those students don't have any way to really advocate for themselves or respond to that, I think that was in itself a really bad decision, regardless of anything else. But I do think that I think that what I'd like to ask is, after that decision was made on Thursday, you were at the Student Senate meeting, the people who wrote the decision said, oh, well, actually, no student should be blamed based on like a specific behavior they were doing. We don't know if that was the reason it was spreading, and those students shouldn't be punished in any more than they broke the code of conduct, So that was their response, but that contradicts exactly what was said in the statement that was sent out, basically blaming those students for what happened. So I just want to know who's going to be held responsible for that decision to do that.
I am not in a position to answer that question.
Andrew,
and I'm not trying to put you off.
I guess my question is, do you agree that that's an important question that needs to be asked?
I think if it's your question, then yes, it's important because it's your question.
Andrew, this might be a better question for Tom Hardiman, who runs student conduct at NC State, which we can get in touch with him about it.
I'm appreciative of that. I just want to mention that when earlier was asked why graduate student classes were still being taught in person, Dean Harries mentioned that it might be because, they're trusted more, their behavior is like better or something. But if that's an assumption that we've had since before the pandemic, then I don't know why we didn't factor that in to our initial predictions that like people would get sick So, I mean, I just wonder why that's being factored in now as opposed to before.
No, and that's a totally valid question. Unfortunately, and I'm not speaking for Dr. Cassani, she's welcome to disagree with me, but I don't think Dr. Cassani necessarily has that answer for us today.
Well, no, thank you for your time. I apologize if I took too much of it.
No, you're fine. There is a question in the chat about advice for individuals who have tested positive for COVID-19. Now, this one I can answer. Seriously, Andrew, I do appreciate it. It's tough. You know, COVID-19 is an interesting disease, as many viral illnesses are. And the physiology, I think the pathophysiology, the changes, I think we're just beginning to maybe understand. And it's what seems to be true is that it's a bit unpredictable to know who's going to get serious illness and who isn't. So having said that, it's hard to say to you, how do you stay healthy? You know, the biggest thing is fluids, always. And certainly there's been issues around people who are quickly getting dehydrated because you just don't feel good. You just don't want to get up and get another glass of water. You have a fever. You evaporate more when you have a fever. And so people get dehydrated, which only adds to the issues, the vascular issues that are happening. And rest, because it definitely is a hyperimmune response, and that wears you out and wears you down. As far as I know, there aren't a whole lot of other things to do. You can, of course, take medication to control fevers, and the aches and pains, and they seem to definitely help and do better. And then there's the recovery period. And this is probably, to me, the most frightening for younger adults, because there clearly have been studies now that show fairly prolonged and somewhat silent effects long-term, especially cardiac effects, and especially in healthy young individuals. So episodes of heart failure, inability to regain exercise tolerance, all of those things. And so that's why it's particularly scary, I think, in the young age group, because you have a relatively mild infection when you have the infection, but you do have long-standing effects. So I would say advocate for yourself if physicians don't believe you. If you are infected and you're still just not coming back, keep at it, because there may be long-term effects. I think the other aspect of it is there is cognitive impairment clearly with infection. It doesn't have to be severe infection. So there's what's commonly termed COVID brain, where people feel dull and confused, and that also may last for a longer period of time. A lot of this is vascular, microvascular, and a lot of it has to do with the immune response, because a young adult's body is very healthy and it responds in a healthy way. And unfortunately, sometimes that immune response is a bit too healthy, and that's really what hurts. So those are the biggest ones. How to prevent that, we don't know. Frankly, we don't know how to prevent that. You know, we don't know if extra doses of vitamin C seem to help. There is some anti-inflammatory and vascular effects of vitamin C. Some people have looked at some of the other naturopathic effects, medications to try to limit those effects. And I haven't seen any of those. And I think you all know a lot more about the medical treatments that really haven't worked, and in fact may be deleterious. So it's a tough one. It's a really tough one. And I think, unfortunately, time will tell. And we've only had this virus for 8 months. So it's not enough time. Certainly are enough cases, but not enough time to do the science. Are antibody tests available at NC State? We are not currently offering antibody tests because the testing that's out there is not accurate, and we still don't have good assays for neutralizing antibodies. So we don't know if any antibody presence is predictive. There have just been, I think, 2 studies published in the past week or so showing what seems to be, even at low levels, protection at any presence of antibodies. But again, antibodies is recovery, and we've only had this virus for 8 months, so we still haven't had enough recovery to know the persistence factors. We don't do antibody tests. The indication for antibody tests is pretty limited, and usually in hospitalized patients, and that's not what we work with, so we don't have antibody tests. The student is test positive or in quarantine. Hold on, I want to see the whole question, sorry. Yeah, so when we put somebody in our in-house quarantine, what we do is we reach out to them. Initially we didn't do a good job of that. That is one thing we had to learn to do better. But now we have a system in place where we reach out to them, if not daily. And remember, this is quarantine, so not sick. We reach out to them maybe every other day. For our patients who are ill and symptomatic that are in isolation, we're working on establishing a good telemedicine program with them. So we've done it a little bit, but we have to do it better. So that's currently what we're doing in terms of care. And if students are in our isolation units, we provide food. It's not always the best, but we're trying. And we're now doing daily calls to them just to see what they need. So we've arranged for medications to be delivered and some special treats. People, you'd be surprised how many people in isolation and quarantine need that caffeine. So we've had people develop caffeine withdrawal, not a good thing. So we've been delivering coffee and tea, and things like that. So we're trying to do better on just people just trying to stay physically there. And then the counseling center has set up some pretty unique drop-in sessions for some of our students who are in isolation and quarantine. Now that's on campus. Unfortunately, we don't have the resources to be able to supply as much to off-campus students, especially in terms of the food and the treats. But I think the counseling center resources are available to off-campus students as well, which I assume most of you would be. And Enrique, yes, you're right. They do not have to pay for testing. So even if your insurance doesn't cover it, we pick up whatever the balance of the cost is.
James, do you have one last question?
Yeah, I'm still kind of trying to find words, but I guess basically, I feel like while I'm certainly not a public health expert, and neither are my friends, and my friend circle, we spent the summer just asking each other, are we really going to bring students back to campus? And if so, when will be closed, not if. And so it's just hard to get out of the mindset of like, we did this and we made it, I mean, not even 2 weeks without closing. And I don't know if you have anything else to say about that, or maybe a more productive would be, you know, if you could rewind the clock a month, what might you do differently, you know, as students are coming back to campus to try and keep on top of this? I mean, I guess it's probably not really so much health as off-campus stuff, but anything along those lines. Sorry, that's rambling.
No, that's fine. I mean, I always said this was going to have much more of a social impact than it had a health impact. And in some places I was wrong, and unfortunately it had a major health impact. But, you know, communicable disease is all about community. And so I think that if I had to turn back the clock, I might respect that more, having seen what happened on campus. Would that change my input into the decision? Maybe. Maybe I would have emphasized some things more or less, but I think, you know, I think even I underestimated that a little bit. So I don't think still that may not have changed the decision, because I don't make the decision, but it may have changed what I emphasized or didn't emphasize in my input. But it definitely would color it now. I don't know if it would change it, but it would color it for sure. Yeah, the retrospectoscope is not kind to people.
All right, we have 2 more questions in the chat, and then with respect to Dr. Cassani's time, I am going to cut it off there. So the first question is from Hannah. Do you have to have symptoms or have been in proximity with someone, or can you come in and get testing and that will be covered?
It will be covered. You come in, make an appointment and come in. Last Tuesday, we said this is silly. We need to test as many people as we can. You may or may not know this, but we actually went to I think we're up to all but 2 fraternity sorority houses and have tested everybody who's there who wanted the test done. And when we decided to do that to try to get a handle on how big, how bad, how maybe not so bad it was, turned out to be bad. We said, well, if we're offering it into these houses, then we have to offer it to everybody. And that was my argument, and the administration said, do it, and we'll cover it. So I'm pretty proud of that, actually. I'm proud to be part of an institution that believes that. And they are fully supporting the surveillance program. So, I mean, that's pretty generous. I'm glad that we were able to do that. So make an appointment, come in and get tested. You're going to have trouble in the next day or 2 because, we're dealing with Carroll Hall and the fallout from that. But we'll get people tested. We're amping it up. It's not a difficult test. And so really it's a self-administered nasal swab. We don't have to go far back. It's in the front of the nose. And you do it yourself so that it's a little bit less obnoxious. And you get observed doing it. And there it goes.
Then we have a question from Anna. How is NC State going to consider opening when they do? How can we open without the same thing happening and then reclosing again?
Yeah, I am not the person to answer that one. I am so knee deep in looking at COVID test results and trying to figure out what to do with people that when that part of the discussion, frankly, right now occurs, I start looking at lab results. I just have, it's been a rough week, folks. So yeah, sorry about that.
Trust me, data is my safe space too.
I wish it was my safe space. I don't know, there's a lot of landmines waiting in it.
Dr. Cassani, thank you so much for joining us. If we could all give Dr. Cassani a round of applause for staying and answering all of our questions. I know they were tough, but I really appreciate all of the answers you were able to give us today.
It's fine. I really appreciate being here. I know that student health is one of the best deals in town for the graduate students. It's a warm place in my heart. So we're still here, and we're still here to serve you. You don't have to be sick with coronavirus. Come in and see us. So thanks a lot. I appreciate it. Funds. Thank you.
All right, Dr. Cassani, you are welcome to hang out if you would like to continue to observe our meeting.
Don't take it personally, but I'm splitting. I have some labs. I have labs to catch up on. Thanks, everybody. Have a good
day, Dr. Cassani.
Okay, bye-bye.
All right, and now we will be moving into approval of the minutes. Because this is our first meeting of the semester, we have no minutes. And so we are now going to go into reports of the executive board. So let's pull those up on the screen real quick. I've been afraid to do the screen share, so I apologize. I'm deeply unqualified to do anything computery, so. All righty. Sumit, would you like to begin?
Yeah, sure. Thank you again. So as you all know that undergrad classes have been moved online, and grad classes, some of the grad classes actually are in person still now. But OS has confirmed that, and maybe all of you got the confirmation email that there will be no conflict with the immigration rule for the students who are working here or studying here in F1 visa. As you also know that many of us grad students who are working in the labs as a research assistant will be continuing working in the labs until any further notices. And as of now, what I have talked to many of the faculty members from our college and different other grad students, Both the grad students and many of the faculty members also want at least the research to be continued on, even if the classes are online, for the better sake of the students. And since the faculty, since it has been more than 5 or 6 months, many of the research activities have been in halt. So many of the students who are trying to get graduated soon, and there might be a shortage of research fund as well, due to different scarcity of grants. So students and many of the faculty members want at least the lab activities, lab research continues. And dining facility, as a member of the dining committee, I have observed their facilities, recent facilities, and they have been trying their best to reorganize the whole dining environment and providing more support to students. They're actually expanding more spaces, as you saw, so that there could be minimal contact, among the students, and so that the students can maintain social distance, having lunch or their meals. Even the oval dining in the Centennial campus, they have gone fully on delivery. So it's like they are concentrating more on delivering food on online or through apps like GrabHub, rather than in contact delivery. So I think the other facilities, the library as well, they're trying their best to keep the environment safe. So this is now our responsibility as well, I guess, to maintain the decorums and all other rules and regulations. That's all from my part.
I see a hand up from Dr. Harris.
Yeah, I just wanted to clarify with the OIS part, because that's a little bit complicated in that because grad classes remained face-to-face, any new international student, and we didn't have many of them because of obvious travel bans and everything else, but any new international student has to maintain their face-to-face class. So that's one wrinkle in this. And, obviously if we pivot to something else, there won't be an issue with that. But as things currently stand, that is one element that new international graduate students need to be aware of. For those in a research program, as long as they're in a thesis or dissertation hour, those count as face-to-face. But we have a few who are in non-thesis that made it here, and for those, they need to maintain that course.
All right, thank you. I can't see the chat, so are there any other questions? Okay.
Sorry.
No, go for it, Andrew.
I just want to verify something. Wasn't the ruling about necessary face-to-face for international students ruled against? I just want to know a clarification on that.
So for continuing students, it was, but for any new student, they actually couldn't have gotten into the country if there weren't at least one face-to-face class that they were enrolled in. So it wasn't quite as black and white as some might have thought.
Dr. Harris, I work at OIS and I can speak to that a little bit if you would like me to.
Oh yeah, that'd be great.
Yeah, so I'm currently the graduate assistant with OIS, and the ruling was that anyone that is already in the country right now is okay. If we had to switch to online, anyone that's already here is fine. The issue is for students that have not yet been able to get into the country at this point. So anyone who is still looking to enter the country has to have an in-person class, or CBP won't let them through because they don't think that there's probable cause for them to enter the country. But anyone that's already here, even if they're a first semester student, should be fine if things get switched to online. I hope that helped to clarify a little bit for anyone that was confused.
Thank you both.
All right, thank you all. Next up we have Josh, our treasurer. Josh?
Hello? Okay.
There you are.
Sorry. Yeah, not much. So we did send out chapter reimbursements again this year. And then as of right now, we're still going to review block grants. Yeah, I guess questions.
Any questions for Josh?
I have a question. How does that process work of chapter reimbursements? Are we supposed to get an email about it, or is it just something that's done automatically through bank accounts, or what happens?
So it's done somewhat automatically. So basically I go through and I calculate out, based on the criteria outlined in the Constitution, how much money you're getting. And then I send that to Ashley Chilton in the graduate school. And then she works with all of the bookkeepers and accountants of the individual departments to send the money from our account to that account. Usually takes about 2 weeks, so it should be there by now. If not, if you have to check with your department's bookkeeper or accountant, depending on their title, that handles the money. But if you have any questions, definitely email me.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Josh?
Yeah, I have one. So our program was awarded money for a department-wide in-person event that we do every year. And, obviously that's not going to happen. We can't have in-person events. So my question is, how transferable is that money? Should it be returned? Can it be used for other things or for something similar?
Was this a block grant?
It was not a block grant. It was a grant or not a grant, just general money that we asked for in our allotment, if that's the right word. But to buy supplies for a big roast that we do every year that acts as our fundraiser.
Mm-hmm.
Excuse me, Josh. This is James.
Yeah.
So that sounds to me like that's student government appropriations.
Yes.
Okay, cool. So yeah, so that's not us, but I will send you an email in the chat of the person you need to ask about that.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
No worries.
Any other questions for Josh? Okay, moving on. We would normally have VP Student Government Relations, but we currently have that position empty, but we will be filling it tonight. Devesh, VP of Communications.
Hey guys, how you doing? Well, I don't have any particular updates right now because the start of the semester and really nothing much going on. But important things are Paw Prints is finally back out. So if there's stuff that you guys want to publish, let me know. And you all should already have the links for submitting Paw Prints articles. I can attach that to this one, and I can link and send a link in the chat too. And I guess that's it.
Excellent. Any questions for Devesh? Okay. Next up, Kun Cheng, our VP of Academic Affairs.
Hi everyone. So there's only one item. Is the fall 2020 GSA Conference and Travel Awards is open. We know most awards are probably not going to be in person, so we still encourage you to, apply because the travel awards also covers the registration fee. So please let your people know that it's open, and the deadline is September 15th by midnight. Any questions?
All right.
Okay.
Being no questions, we don't have any updates from a VP internal. We will also be electing that position tonight. Emily, VP External Affairs.
Yeah, just real quick, I sent out an email about a week or so ago for a solicitation for the Legislative Action Days, which in previous years we would have sent 4 students to Washington, D.C. to advocate for student government and for graduate students in particular. This year, as to be expected, it will be virtual instead. So this is good for at least one reason. That means we can send more people, so more people can get this experience. There's a link there that has a tentative agenda, but we would like to get as many people as possible that we can send to this this event, because we think it is important that we, as grad students, both have this skill of advocation and, you know, just for us and our general rights. But no, when you look at this agenda, our plan is to have a committee of people go. So you do not have to go to every single event or attend every single Zoom meeting. We don't want people getting burnt out on the first day because it's 2 straight days of Zoom calls. So I highly recommend you all apply. I've only heard great things. They have some great speakers lined up. The second thing that we have is that GSA has 18 seats to fill for the Committee on Committees. So we'll have a bunch of different committees ranging from like commencement and libraries to food security and things like this. And so we need to fill these seats. It's also important so that we can get our graduate student representation into the university as a whole. So I also recommend you guys apply to that and recommend all of your peoples to apply for it as well. We'd like to have lots of options. So yeah, that's all I've got.
Any questions for Emily? Okay, seeing no questions, I have a very brief update today. Please go ahead and read it. I'm waiting for updates on the tuition and fees process, but once I know, you'll know. I know grad student fees have always been a concern, so please feel free to reach out during this process if you have any questions or concerns once we have more information from the university. There's a new graduate student issues task force that just began. I'm going to let Dr. Harries talk more about it during his update, but we had our first meeting and it was very productive. And then finally, we do have a transportation update, which is that transportation is looking to create a winter parking pass. We don't know if there will be a cost or what that cost will be. So once we're working currently with transportation, and once I have more information, I will let you all know. Are there any questions?
Are you asking questions about the student fees committee?
You can ask questions about whatever you would like.
Well, bringing up the student fees committee, let me share my video again, sorry. I was lagging, so anyways, the question I have is, do we know why UNC a couple of years back was able to have the graduate school pay for these student fees, and why we are still in why we haven't been able to accomplish that yet? Like, what are the things we've identified why we can't do that?
So there are a couple of reasons why NC State has not moved over to that. The biggest issue is that, and this is something that UNC is currently struggling with, we are not able to do any of that from fee money. That's also something that UNC is not allowed to do. And so right now we're trying to work through how that could possibly be done. We also don't have as large of an endowment, and what this is going to mean for at least the individual departments at UNC is that this fee money is ultimately going to be put into their responsibility bank. I'm going to let Dr. Harries clarify or correct anything I just said there.
No, I think Lexi, you're fundamentally right. I mean, one thing that isn't happening is the grad school isn't picking them up at Chapel Hill. I mean, they do get money from various sources, so I think they're going to be paying a part for it. But the real squeeze that we have, and something that they overlooked, quite frankly, when they decided to do it, is in addition to not being able to use fee money, we can't use any state funds to pay student fees. So anything generated through tuition, any of the appropriation that we get from the legislature, we can't use any of that money to offset the cost of fees. And so that really puts us in a bind in terms of where do we find the money to do it. Ultimately, it can only come basically from the gifts that we have. But one of the things that's a struggle there is that the vast majority of gifts that are given for very specific purposes. And so there's not a huge pool of unrestricted funds that could be used to even pay part of it.
Can I ask a follow-up?
Yeah.
So I recognize that a lot of donors don't give to support grad students specifically, or campus workers. But has there been any calls to do that? Basically, has there been any sort of, as if we all agree that this is not something that we should be doing, then the university agrees that it's something that we probably should enforce on the graduate students, then has there been any calls to donors saying, hey, is this something that you would be willing to give money for? Has there been anything that we have done?
I think the requests that have been made, Andrew, have focused on trying to get full graduate fellowships. So, I don't think you're going to find, maybe there's a donor out there who's willing to give, it's going to be hundreds of millions of dollars to create the pool that's necessary to pay the fees. Because all you can use is 4% of what's basically gifted to do it. So you're in the math department, you can probably figure out, for the 10,000 graduate students, what that would be given the fees, what that pot would have to look like. So I ultimately when, and I can only speak from sort of the sidelines on this, when they go after big donors, they're trying to figure out what those donors really want to do. And I'll be blunt about it. I don't think for many donors paying graduate fees is on the front burner. And that's the way it is.
Thank you for that. Just one more thing. In the student fees, I've always wondered about this, and when I last spoke to you, you had said something that kind of made me actually think about this, where when you think about how large the coach salaries here at NC State are, that's coming from all the donors that are supporting the sports program, right?
Yep.
Right. So that's that kind of pot. But I wonder why we are left paying athletics fees, part of our student fees, when the sports program has so much money that is just being given to coaches. Is that because the donors are specifically saying this is for the coach, or
there's the Wolfpack Club that raises funds directly for athletics.
So why haven't they been able to cover our student fees if they're getting so much money?
That's a good question, Andrew. I don't have the answer for that. They've got a big budget.
Can we advocate for that? How can we advocate for that?
We've certainly been trying. I think, COVID has impacted a whole bunch of things, and sort of rethinking fees is one of them.
So somebody asked, who has the answer to that? Who can graduate students speak to about that?
Well, ultimately, it's the fee committee, and I don't know who's going to serve on it from the GSA, but so Lexi is the person to talk to.
All right, thank you.
Are there any other questions?
I have a quick question. With enhanced grading for this this fall, I'm having a hard time finding anything on the website about that, and I'll just ask if there's any decisions on that about for the fall semester.
You know, I'm not sure, and I'm going to turn that over to our VP Academics.
Okay.
So my first meeting with the school will be this Thursday. I'll update you as soon as I can. I'll write that question down. Thank you.
Dr. Harris, do you have any updates on that?
Can you just repeat it? Sorry, I didn't quite.
Yes, certainly. Just the enhanced grading policy, similar to the spring 2020, if that would be repeated.
Yeah,
or
that is
modified
already
for
in
the
place
fall.
for the fall. Yep, that
Okay.
same process is in place for the fall.
Okay.
Sorry,
Thank
I missed your question.
All righty. Are there any other questions? Okay. Seeing no other questions, we're going to transition back over to this wonderful document. It will load. There we go. And we are ready for our advisor report from Dr. Peter Harries.
Well, I hope you all had some sort of summer. I don't know if it was fun, and I don't know if it was good. It's been 5.5 months of basically uncertainty, and I think that has pervaded so many aspects of everything, from, you know, what the restart of campus was going to look like, how research was going to restart. I mean, we're all living through very much of an unprecedented time. And I think, you know, as Dr. Cassani said, she had been planning in some ways for a pandemic throughout her career, but now that it's here, it's a very different story from the sort of theoretical side of things. So it's been an incredibly challenging time on so many fronts. I think one of the main challenges is it's really hard to make a good decision. And, you know, that's something new, I think, for almost all of us, is just how complex and convoluted and how many unanticipated parts of this are impacting us. And I certainly don't want to minimize all of the impacts, from, you know, health effects to mental health effects to, you know, just sort of how we are living our lives. For instance, spending hours and hours on Zoom. It's a very different world than it was back at the beginning of March. And, you know, it's just super hard to predict what is going to happen, what the timing is going to be, and how that's all going to evolve. I think, you know, one of the best parts of this is, well, if there is anything good in this, is that, you know, research has restarted to a large degree, and, you know, students, especially grad students, are able to make progress on their degrees. I mean, that's an important part of sort of continuing on. I'm not saying that that's easy and there aren't concerns related to that. I know that there are. But I also think, you know, moving forward in some direction is really a critical piece. Another thing that Lexi briefly mentioned that, you know, I want to give her and Coleman a lot of credit for is really pushing for the formation of this graduate student issues task force. And I think it's a group of 10 folks. 5 of the people are students. I'm on it. Lexi and I are co-chairing it. There's an associate dean, Dr. Pasquinelli from the College of Natural Resources, who is a very strong advocate for graduate students. There's a DGP, Dr. Kara Peters from Mechanical and Aerospace Engineering, who I also think is a very strong advocate for graduate students. There's a member from the Faculty Senate, which I think, given some of the things that we want to try to tackle, is really critical. And then there's also a GSE, in this case, from poultry science and from physiology. So I think, and then there's also, of course, graduate students. Lexi is on it. Wow, I can't remember everybody's names, but there's a GSA rep. Sorry, I forgot your name. A representative from the Black Graduate Students Association. I thought it was also important to have, and Lexi did as well, to have someone representing international students who are in basically non-thesis programs who are often self-funded. And I'm forgetting someone, but it's been a long day. Who am I forgetting? Sorry about that. So, I mean, we are going to be addressing a number of issues, and I think we're starting with some elements associated with international students because the timing of that is very much, there are things that need to be discussed before the end of the semester. So those are going on, but I do think, you know, everything from fees to GA stipends, and also a graduate student bill of rights are things that this committee is going to take a look at. And certainly if you have ideas of other topics, I'm sure Lexi and I and anybody else on the committee would be more than happy to hear what you have. So, I mean, it has been a heck of a summer, and, you know, for everybody, and I think the uncertainty is certainly challenging. And, you know, I think we are going to move forward in one way or another. And certainly I think everyone, unfortunately, needs to sort of expect the unexpected. And we just never know. You know, I can say where we are right now at 8:29 p.m. on Monday, but we could be in a very different place at 9 o'clock. So it's an incredibly fluid situation, and I just appreciate, you know, all that all of you have done to sort of keep the university going, because I think ultimately that needs to be our goal. And certainly, you know, some of the issues about RAs and the power differential is something that I am very much attuned to. And certainly if you feel that it's an issue that isn't being effectively dealt with at the departmental level, please get in touch with me, and you know, I'll certainly help to do what I can to see if we can move forward. And we've had some of those conversations. Lexi's been involved with them with certain programs already, and I think by and large we've gotten very positive and responses to the concerns that are raised. So sometimes I understand that power differential, but, you know, some of those conversations just need to happen.
Are there any questions for Dr. Harris?
I see something in the chat about fees, and, you know, at this point we have very little control over those. I mean, the BOG has exerted significant control over the university system, and in an area where they have, in addition to various other places, exerted control is over tuition and fees, and they have basically required universities to charge those as they would have beforehand. I mean, my feeling is based on what's happened this year, where basically there'll be no increases in fees, that tuition and fees will remain stagnant for the foreseeable future. I think that's very likely to happen. That's not to say that we're not going to work at trying to find a way to at least reduce some of them, but many of them pay for very critical services that many graduate students use, and certainly there's some that are less used by graduate students, but I think I would encourage everyone to really take a look at what those fees are covering.
If I may also just quickly add something.
Of course, Lexi.
We do have the mandatory fees committee, or the task force developed out of the chancellor's office that both Dr. Harris and I sit on, that's currently looking at mandatory graduate student fees and how that interplay works. Unfortunately, due to COVID, things have been put on the back burner, which is unfortunate. I know, and I know this affects all of us, and we're working to get it handled, but that commission is ongoing. Any other questions for Dr. Harris?
I have one. So this is James. Diggers, I don't know how candid you can be, but I think it's fair to say at this point that the university's opening up was pretty much a disaster. And all I've heard in communications and from administrators is to blame students, which to some degree is fair, but why is there no admin response taking any ownership or responsibility for what's happened?
I mean, James, I can't really answer that. I mean, I'm not on the group that makes those decisions. I mean, I'll be blunt about it. I really don't know what sort of deliberations went into it and what the political pressures that were brought to bear were. I do know that they were substantial, but I don't have many details. You know, this was decided at levels that, you know, I would say lots of the deans are sort of frustrated at being sort of left out of the loop. I mean, we often heard things the same time everybody else did, and then had to scramble to deal with the ramifications of those.
Yeah, I guess I mean more going forward though. Like what's happened has happened, but if the chancellor or somebody would just say, yeah, we screwed up and we're trying to do the best we can, I think that would mean a lot. And since that isn't happening, I know a lot of people are just getting more and more frustrated.
Yeah, I mean, I can't really speak to the decisions that the chancellor makes or how, you know. I mean, all I can say is I know he's working his butt off and trying to do as well as he can. I mean, I'm sure he's incredibly frustrated with how things evolved and how quickly it went downhill. I really don't think that was expected by anybody.
Just to follow up, I mean, what I hear from, you know, what this type of thing that James has brought up is that we should, you know, try to forgive, you know, and recognize that if we were in that position, that maybe we would have made a mistake. But I mean, this is just me. I don't know who else feels this way. If I was making over $600,000 a year, that comes with a certain degree of responsibility and status. And I'd like to think, wait, are you guys hearing me? Because I'm getting lag.
No, I can hear you.
We can hear you.
Sorry. All right, I was lagging for a bit, so let me just backtrack a little bit. So I think if I was making over $600,000 a year, that would come with a fair amount of responsibility and status. And I think that ultimately, when we start to have the argument of whether we should, you know, basically forgive the chancellor for making.
Now he's frozen, right?
Yes, he is. Yes, I just wanted to clarify that. Okay.
I would say that's maybe not a question for this time, whatever this comment is.
All
That
right.
might be something we can address.
I'm back. Can people hear me? Sorry.
Yeah, hey, Andrew, it sounds like you're having a little bit of, can you hear me, Andrew? Hello? Can anyone else hear me?
I can hear you, Emily.
Right, maybe this is not, I think we should move on to continue the rest of this meeting.
Yeah. Are there any other questions? Okay. With that, the time is 8:37. We will reconvene in 5 minutes at 8:42 for a quick stretch break. Go on, get some water, get some wine if you need it, and we'll be right back. Hello, everybody. It is 8:42. We are going to reconvene. I'm going to give everyone a minute to walk on back to their computers. I hope everyone got whatever they needed, whether that was bathroom break or a drink refill. And we're going to pick up with, normally we would start up with old business, but again, This is the first meeting of the year, so we have no old business, and we can jump right into new business. We have a good number of things for all of the new reps. Quick poll, has everyone had a chance to look at the information that we sent out regarding the rep expectations and packets review? Can I just get a yes or a no in the Zoom call? I'm seeing claps.
Yes.
I'm seeing yeses, lots of yeses. Excellent. I love to see the yes. This makes me so happy, guys. I'm so glad everyone got a chance to look it over. Does anyone have any questions regarding the information that was provided in that packet? Any questions? Okay, seeing no questions, please be sure to review that. One important piece of information that was, you are required to submit a letter of credentials. We've attached the information for the letter of credentials within the new business. Please be sure to look that over and have it filled out. Josh, I'm going to turn that over to you. Do you have any specific requests, suggestions, concerns regarding the letters of credentials?
I guess the biggest thing is just ask me questions if you're having trouble with any parts. It is due by the start of the next meeting in September. But yeah, also make sure to write out the full name of your GSA. A lot of the acronyms are very similar and it's hard to tell them apart sometimes.
Yes, so please fill those out. That's how you get your reimbursements at the end of the year. So we do need those, otherwise you get no money. Right, Josh?
You get not as much as you could.
Exactly.
You could.
Thank you, Josh. Are there any questions about the letters of credentials?
Quick question. Is there a way to know if the letter of credential was received correctly and approved?
Not officially, but I will look through them whenever I receive them this year. So, and then I'll bounce back any questions or anything that's wrong. Yeah, I guess I'll put my email in the chat, so you can just email it directly to me.
You will also get, if you haven't emailed me back about things, you know that I get, you will get some pretty aggressive emails from me if we have not received your letters of credentials. So you'll know you haven't gotten them in. Is there a format that we can use?
Do you want to just pull it up?
Yeah, I can do that. So here's letters of credentials. I assume that you can use anything ranging from Word to PDF to submitting this, and yes, an electronic signature will be accepted.
Yes.
Are there any other questions? Okay, seeing no other questions on this, I'm going to close that out. Okay, overview of standing committees and preference form. You were all sent a very brief overview of the standing committees, which can be found in our Constitution. And the preference form was sent out over the rep listserv. Please fill it out. Otherwise, we will just be randomly assigning you to committees, which doesn't sound nearly as fun. On the internal standing committee preference form, judicial committee is not an option, but it is listed as a standing committee. Which of these is wrong? The judicial committee should be an option on the committee preference form. If it is not currently an option, I will edit the form to make it an option.
Yeah, I just forgot that option. My bad, guys. I'll fix it.
Oh, Emily, I already sent one out.
Oh, okay. That works.
Yeah, don't worry. So we'll go ahead.
I think the one you sent out was the one I made.
Oh, was it? Okay.
I believe so, because I definitely left out judicial now that I'm thinking about it. So unless you sent out a different one than the one on this preference form.
I believe it's a different one. I believe I sent out one to all of the reps. So we'll go ahead and update this, and you can submit either preference form. It will be fine. We'll get your preference in, no problem. But yes, judicial is a committee, and Emily will update that. Any other questions about standing committees preference forms? Please have those turned in as soon as you possibly can. It just makes everything easier, and we'd like to get started with our standing committees as soon as possible. And okay, next we have election of new GSA Executive Board officers. So I have linked in all of their bios. Please go ahead, click on that, fill out the Google doc that gives you your voting when you have a moment. And I'm very excited to handle our elections. This is open to GSA representatives who are currently in recognized GSA chapters to vote on. So please go ahead, fill that out when you have a chance. Voting will close tonight, an hour after the meeting. Are there any questions about voting, about the election of new GSA Executive Board officers? We currently have 2 open positions, internal affairs and student governance relations. Where's the voting link? The voting link should be at the very, very bottom of that Google Doc. If it is not, I've done something incorrectly. Excellent. Thank you, Hannah. It is, in fact, at the bottom of the link, so go ahead and vote when you have a moment. I really urge you to read through all of their statements. I know each of the candidates worked very hard on them. Okay. The next order of business and the final order of business on our new business list is the election of, voting on new GSA chapter membership. If a new GSA would like to join as a member of the university GSA, they must be voted on by the organization. Do we have any representatives from those GSAs present tonight? If you could just give your hand raise function, that would be fantastic. I'm scrolling. Okay, we have someone here. Excellent. Okay. Alexander, are you from the Geospatial Analytics GSA?
Yeah, I'm with the Geospatial Graduate Student Organization.
Awesome. So we have the Black Graduate Student Association, the Geospatial Analytics GSA, and the Jenkins Minorities in Business Student Association. I'd like to open up the floor for any questions about those organizations. Obviously, we have someone from Geospatial Analytics here, and the other 2 organizations I will do my best to field questions on.
Oh, sorry. I raised my hand. I think I did it late because I was trying to figure out how to do that.
Sorry, you're good.
I'm with BGSA.
Excellent, excellent. So good to have you here. Okay. So, do we have any questions for any of the chapters that are here right now? about maybe why they want to join GSA, about anything to do with that?
How about just a quick 5 on why they want to join GSA?
Absolutely. Okay. Would someone from the BGSA like to begin?
Sure. So the university used to have a BGSA back in the day, and we just recently reconvened in the last few years, 2 to 3 years. And so for us, we've been kind of operating very independently and not really having integrated yet into the broader scheme of things in terms of other graduate students of the university. So we're really interested in getting more involved at the macro level in terms of really engaging with other graduate students outside of just the BGSA. And so we think this is a good opportunity to make sure that we're involved in kind of the moving and shaking and the decision-making things beyond just our one group, but more so with other students as well. So we're really excited to partner and be present here in this space.
Awesome, thank you. Next, we'll hear from Geospatial Analytics GSA.
Yeah, I think maybe largely to echo that, this year we're trying to, I think, expand. We're relatively new, but it's been important for us, or it's been something that we've been contemplating, that we want to be more involved with the graduate student body as a whole. And so moving forward, I think it's something that's really important for us on our radar. And sort of with that, I think we're trying to plan several large events that I think would be of interest to the graduate student body as a whole, and maybe just the student body as a whole. And so I think making sure that we're connected with all of the different organizations and programs is really important for us moving forward, both for feedback and for just having that connection and getting a sense of where everything stands.
And speaking briefly on behalf of the Jenkins Minority in Business Student Association, they are a brand new organization. They were just approved by student involvement. This is their first year. And I believe that the same can be said of this organization, where they're looking to integrate, get more involved within the larger student organization population for graduate students. Are there any other questions for these orgs? Any questions? Okay. Seeing no other questions, I'm going to close the period of questioning. What we can do now is we can either move to vote on all of these independently, or vote on each of them as one block of options. So what I would like to do is, do I hear a motion to block these nominations? And what that would mean is that we'd vote on them all at once. And if we don't block them, we vote on all of them independently.
Motion to block.
And do I hear a second?
Second.
Okay, so what that means is that we'll be voting on all of them together. Can I very briefly see if there is, what I'd like to do is, in the participants section, you have a yes and no check. So very quickly, to vote on this measure, if you vote yes, you are in favor of blocking these votes. If you vote no, you are not in favor of blocking these votes. Okay, I'm gonna give this another 30 seconds.
Sorry, could you, where are we voting?
So this is in the participants section of Zoom. So if you open that up, you will see a green check and a red X.
Perfect. Yeah, sorry. I appreciate it.
Oh, no worries. Zoom is a monster. Okay. So I'm gonna call time with 41 yes and 2 no. We do have consensus that we are going to block these votes, so we will vote on them all together. I will allow for a period of debate if anyone would like to speak on the merits of including these organizations in the UGSA. Do I have any pro debate?
I mean, I would just generally say that I don't think it's in the practice of this organization to exclude student organizations who actively want to be involved at this level of decision making and advocacy in this university. And all of these organizations represent the exact kind of representative motivations that we value here as a university organization, and can only enhance our ability to advocate together collectively as a group of graduate students. Definitely pro.
Excellent, thank you. Do I have any con debate? Any pro debate? Any con debate? And one last time, any pro debate? Okay, seeing no debate, we will move forward into our vote. You can either vote yes or no, and by not voting, you abstain. So please go ahead and use your green checks and red X's. I'll give this another 30 seconds. Okay, with 45 votes in the affirmative and 0 votes in the negative, let's give a round of applause to all of the new GSA chapters which will be joining our organization. Excellent. So with that, that closes out new business. Are there any open floor comments that people would like to make? Please use the raise hand function. Jesse?
This is just more of a question. How soon does the agenda for the meetings get sent out? This is my first year repping, and last year with the COVID-19, the turnover was a little rocky in the MBASA. But just like a meeting agendas, like before the meeting, I guess.
So this meeting was particularly difficult, and I will take most of the responsibility on that one. I had a death in the family this week, and I've been a little preoccupied. So I apologize for that. That will hopefully not happen again in the near future. So we will be more on our game about sending those out before the meetings. So you can probably expect them by Friday before the meeting.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions or comments for the open floor?
Yes, I have a quick one.
Yeah, of course.
So not something that necessarily needs to be resolved in this moment during this open floor, but rereading the standing committee responsibilities and requirements, I've noticed that for some committees, it may or may not be business as usual when compared to, what other committees are looking at for this year. Speaking from experience, the Community and Social Engagement Committee that I chaired last year, all of our operations essentially shut down when the university did. So I wanted to just have said that and just put out a general curiosity about what our expectations are for doing things like planning volunteer activities and social events, particularly from the perspective of, we would do all of these pretty much in person. outside of the GSA formal event, we did ice skating and we do the trivia, and that is a lot of people in a relatively small space at one time, which I'm going to assume is not going to be kosher for pretty much this entire year. So just moving forward, looking for clarity and creativity regarding the new role for not only the standing committee, but also the other ones as well, as we continue to adapt and evolve to these fluid circumstances.
Yeah, that's an excellent point. So this year, obviously there are some committees that typically would do mostly in-person kind of focused events. I think one challenge is going to definitely be creating virtual events within those committees, and that's something that I'm excited to see those committees tackle. But thank you, that's a very good comment. I see another raised hand from James Withrow.
Hey, Megan. Okay, so at the beginning of the meeting, the Senate President had mentioned that we have a few grad Senate seats up for election at the fall election. I just wanted to mention that he actually misspoke, and they are not specifically reserved for first-year grad students. They are for any grad students. We just have held them for the fall election. So if you had anybody in mind, please, don't worry about any restrictions about what year they are in their program.
All right, thank you for that. Any other announcements, open floor comments? Yeah, Andrew.
Hey everyone. So I apologize if earlier it felt like what I was bringing up was off topic. I just want to say that I think that it's important to keep having the discussion about what needs to be done and how the GSA as a whole should advocate for not only graduate students but students. And I think that by virtue of the fact that the university did end up placing public blame on the students who had a party or like whatever they did, was not the correct decision. And I think that it would be nice if we could, as an organization, take a stance on that, just like the Student Senate did on Thursday. So I just want to say that I think we should take a stance. I think we should think more about it and have more discussion. And that if I'm going to continue my point, since nobody else seems like they want to say something, I will give my time to someone else if they want to speak on something. But just to finish my point, I personally believe that, if I was making over $600,000 a year, I wouldn't blame people who were out there, the essential workers, for a decision that I made. I was talking to another graduate student who used to be a EMT, who was the chief EMT, and when he was telling me that when somebody in his unit messed up, it was on him. It was on him for making a decision that didn't protect people. And ultimately, if you look into the idea of the legal term acting in loco parentis, various lawsuits over the last 30 years have shown that universities have a duty, have a civic obligation to their students. And that doesn't only include undergrads, but graduate students, to act in place of a parent in situations where students could be in danger. And I think that there's a case to be made that the university did not successfully act in loco parentis for the purposes of reopening. And I think this needs to be at least discussed. I think that no discussion we should not have a discussion of how to punish these students who just were being students. We should be focused on whether or not the university made the correct decision to reopen, and I think it's clear that they didn't. So, I mean, that just needs to be the point here. I'm willing to hear from anyone else who has an opinion on this, as I'm not trying to say that I have this, correct view of this, and I'd like to hear if anybody has an alternate opinion.
I leave the floor open if anyone has any comments.
I'll just jump in and say I largely agree, especially when I heard a lot of concerns from undergrads about how undergraduate student workers, like such as the library or working for Wolfpack Pickup, were being instructed to enforce the safety guidelines on their peers, while full-time university staff were not. And I just think there's a lot of stuff along the way that the university is responsible for that's contributed to how we got here.
Mm-hmm. I will just say that, well, I fully agree with you, Andrew, but it's important to take this above Dr. Cassini and Dean Harris, who I feel were kind of just put out there as maybe not the best term for it, but kind of sacrificial lambs to us. So like, making sure people higher up the chain of command hear our complaints rather than just the people that are who are public facing is going to be important.
Just to respond to that quickly, I hope that I wasn't at all rude to either Dr. Cassani or Peter Harry or Dean Harris. I think my goal is to have us all recognize that we are in this together, and regardless of where the blame chain ends up, I think that we all need to be asking these questions. So I was asking those questions in regards to figure out what happened, more so than trying to make out either of the faculty that were here in regards to that. So I just want to verify that is the reason that I asked those questions.
That's perfectly fine. I did not think you were being rude at all. You're very deferential, and I think that was good. Just as long as, again, we take it higher than them.
Just to give a point of information to everybody here, we are, as a body, able to submit resolutions and open letters to whomever we would like to. And so if that is something that the members of the GSA would like to do, we can organize that. And so I would encourage you all to, you can email me and we can get that process started in terms of how best to proceed, because that seems to be something that the body would like to do. And from there, once it is proposed and submitted, we can absolutely vote on it. And yes, Anna, this is also a wonderful task for LASA to take on. So are there any other comments, concerns? Oh, and one more thing, I totally spaced. We can also feel free to invite the chancellor and provost to the GSA meeting. If that's something that people within this body would like to do, we can also do that.
One more thing, when the Student Senate had the chancellor come to their meeting on Thursday, I feel like the question period for the chancellor was cut short for the reason why we would just identify that it's important to take this above Dr. Cassani or Dean Harris. And I think that we should be advocating for more time to effectively cross-examine our administrators and figure out what happened, what decisions were made that ended up being either incorrect or short-sighted, or something obviously happened because we had to close within a week of people getting the virus, basically. I mean, the virus has an incubation period of like 8 days, so that means that people were getting sick in the first 2 days of being back. So I mean, basically, like, I think that we need to be advocating for more time to cross-examine our administration, and I think that it can be very effective. So that is just my final point I'd like to make.
Anything else to add into this open floor comment period?
Well, I agree with Andrew. Like this cannot happen again. I mean, if this happened once, they clearly did not take into consideration what the effects were going to be, and clearly the prediction, whatever models they used to predict, were wildly inaccurate. And it's important to note that this shouldn't happen again.
Sorry, I keep coming back. I think it's important to also say that the things that have happened, you know, in the weeks leading up to the reopening, where they had the chancellor had like so-called town halls where people just sent in questions. I think that we all need to recognize that those were not town halls, but more so glorified FAQ sessions. And that is because we didn't have any chat. We had no advocacy outside of the questions the chancellor picked. And I personally believe, and I'm willing to just stand on my own on this, but I think that it was very rude of the administration to our president when she was invited to be in that call and was only given a short speech in the beginning, as opposed to being able to talk more about the point of view of a graduate student to these responses.
Thank you. Are there any other comments? Okay, seeing no more comments, I would look favorably upon a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Seeing a lot of seconds. We'll now do the voting function one more time. Yes and no. Seeing an overwhelming majority of yes votes, I'm going to call it and say yes, we are adjourned at 9:14 p.m., which is surprisingly on schedule. Thank you all so much for bearing with us tonight, and I can't wait to see you all again soon. So have a wonderful rest of your night. Enjoy. Take good care of yourselves and do good self-care, and we'll see you all soon.